All right, we're good to go.
Okay. So for this one, we only had to do the second case study, I guess. It was chapter 10, box 10.8 from page 329. The first question was, what will be the likely impact if the 3 minority employees are terminated? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay, cool.
All right, well, the 3 minorities for this one, I think it was a difficult choice either way you look at it. Like first in the case study, all the minorities, they're still, I mean, they're just that, like even on the team, they're minorities, they're outnumbered. But I don't know. It looks like they were just hired on the company just as part of like a diversity hire push. But if they were all, in fact, let go, I think they also could have an argument to file a suit for discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And even though their work production is equal amongst everybody else in their group, why do the other, I guess you could say, why do the other 7 white males get to keep their jobs over them if it's not performance based?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go next. That was definitely like kind of what I had. And, the company, like they made such an effort to increase the diversity in their team. And so, by terminating those 3 people, they just get rid of all the work that they've done. And yeah, like Cecil said, like there's definitely this chance for a lawsuit from the minorities as well. So
Yeah, that was exactly what I thought of it too, was definitely the lawsuit is a possibility. And then also if they're saying that they care about diversity so much and then they fire all of the diversity hires that they've just made, their actions are speaking louder than their words in that case. And especially from like a PR standpoint, it doesn't look good. It looks like you were like, oh, well, they don't matter that much to us, or
yeah.
like, oh, we say we care about diversity, but we're just gonna, let them all go, and it's not that big of a deal to us.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my take on it too. It sounds like we all kind of had similar thoughts there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely the lawsuit was a possibility, we all thought, and then of course it doesn't look very good, essentially getting rid of all of your diverse employees when you're trying to build diversity in your company.
Yeah.
So for question 2, what will be the likely impact if more senior employees are terminated?
All right, so for this one, I had on the other side, the senior employees have an argument that they should be able to keep their positions over the new employees just based off of seniority. I don't know, but since again, like they said, since all of it was being equal, and I think they also, I think I can see the point that they would make from the case study that they would file a reverse discrimination suit, just
Yeah.
because I mean, these new, I mean, I guess you can just classify them as new hires. They come in, and I mean, why do they get to keep their jobs over us who have been here longer? Um, I think I don't know, terminating the senior members could also have an impact maybe on Karen. Just if they do file a reverse discrimination suit, the company could say they could look at Karen and like ask her what she was thinking, or I don't know. I think ultimately it could end up costing her job.
Hmm.
So I think it would just bring a lot of I don't know. Either way you look at it, there's a bunch of unwanted attention, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
situation for anybody.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely had pretty much the same answer. They can file that lawsuit, and like you said, it's like it's really hard because you want to keep that diversity that like they were trying to build, but at the same time, like you still need your senior partners to like help carry the workload and to help make sure that like they know, the whole team knows what they're doing. I also kind of thought about how it might like cause issues with other long-term employees and how like it could affect people like outside that specific team, because like they get upset about the fact that, you know, like long-term employees were fired instead of like the new hires, and how that could cause like an impact on them and be like, okay, well, like what's to say that like my job's safe, kind of a thing. So like I felt like it could cause like dissension within the entire company too.
Yeah, that's very true. That was something that I actually hadn't thought about, so I'm glad that you brought that up. I definitely agree with that. I think that it could send a message throughout the company that, you know, your jobs aren't safe, and basically, I think kind of either way you go, it sends a message about what you value as a company. And unfortunately, those are kind of things that you both need to value, are diversity and your senior level employees, because of what both of those different groups bring to the team.
Yeah.
So as far as what I thought about this, again, the lawsuit, you know, they've already threatened to sue. And since the performance is equal for everybody, you really don't have a justification for firing everyone or for anyone, aside from the fact that you kind of have to get rid of someone just to keep the company going strong.
Yeah.
And I think that's really unfortunate. So
yeah.
Definitely.
All right. So again, we kind of all brought up the lawsuit, and then you guys brought up some really great points about how this would impact the rest of the company and the message that it would send. Going on to question 3. What criteria should Karen use in making her decision?
Well, I think the only fair choice would be if they all draw straws. No, seriously, I kind of think it's only fair to make the decisions just based off of seniority, being that you know, again, the work performance is equal. Becky brought up, you know, just, you know, it might send the wrong message if you terminate long-term employees, for, you know, if there is a cutback, instead of releasing some of the new people that haven't been there maybe as long. But I think seniority should be the main factor, and just not a discrimination factor. You know, I look at it from kind of like a sports point of view. Like if you have a team with a veteran player who's been there for a while, knows what they're doing, knows their plays. When you have a rookie who comes in, they can maybe do just maybe the job they're doing is on par with the veteran. I think you're still gonna keep your veteran player out there just because of experience and maybe like team cohesion. That's kind of where I see it. That's kind of how I see it.
I had thought about that, but I was also like, I don't know, this is a hard one for me. Like I had a hard time being like, what should they choose to like do, kind of a thing. So I kind of thought like, I tried to like put myself in that position, and there were like 3 things that I kind of like thought about of like what I would look for. And so one of them was like who would work best together, and like so within the team, like who works really well together, and kind of looking at like who maybe doesn't work quite as well with everybody else. Then the second one was who has the drive to keep moving forwards, like because our this chapter kind of talked about being like future oriented and making sure that like you're looking ahead and you're trying to pursue what's going to get you like farther. So like I thought that was a big thing to like look forward to see, like, okay, well, do you have partners who are just kind of like stagnant and don't really have any drive to go anywhere else, or do you have people that like are really trying to push themselves to like get somewhere? And then the third one that I kind of thought of was who works best under Karen's leadership, because that's also like a huge factor of like, okay, well, you know what, I might have the senior partner who's like a really good employee, but they don't work well under me, and like that causes issues for Karen herself. So that was another thing that I kind of like was like, well, that's going to be a big factor for trying to decide who like to pick, especially because like their performance level is all the same. So that was kind of what I thought of.
Yeah, those are definitely some good points and a different way of looking at it. I think taking it from a team perspective is actually a really helpful idea, because then you're, again, like you were saying, thinking of a future orientation, and you're also trying to make sure that people are working as a unit. So I think that's really good. What I came up with, and really the only thing I could think of, was kind of going back to what CJ said, is last one hired, first one fired, unfortunately. But the other thing that I thought of was precedent. You know, what is the precedent at this company for letting people go when you don't have a justification for it? You're essentially laying people off. And so I was thinking that it would probably be the most fair if she kind of sticks to the reasoning that's been used by prior managers. But of course, that has to assume that they were also making ethical decisions. You know, if someone was wrongfully fired, then you kind of can't go off of precedent in that situation. So it's a really, really tough decision, I think. And I definitely think that considering it from a team perspective is pretty wise.
Thanks.
All right. So there was kind of a little bit of some different ideas there, which I really enjoyed, like considering it from a team perspective. And then, of course, CJ's point of view of, you know, basically the same thing that I had to say from that. So question 4, who should Karen terminate and why? Tough question.
Yeah.
Kind of based off of Christine's early answer, and I think she should try to seek support from her boss and find out what the company's goals are. Like if they're serious about diversity retention, then maybe Karen should maybe think about maybe terminating some of the male majority and keeping some of the minority hires on, or she could also look at it where I guess like if the white males have been there for 5 years and the minorities were there for just a few years, we don't know. I guess so. I guess I'll go off of what Christine said. Also, first hired, last hired, first fired. Just because we don't know when exactly all of the 3 newbies were brought on. It just said they were hired within 2 years. So I mean, you never know. I mean, I guess the decision should just be based on. I think it should be based on seniority, but I guess it also depends on what the company's goals are. She should try to make her decision based on those. But she should seek some outside guidance if she can. That would help her make the best decision.
Yeah. This one I kind of had a hard time with it again, because I was just like, this is such like a hefty decision. Like, how do you just go like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna fire so and so, and so I mean, like from like my previous question, obviously I would say like whoever she kind of felt like fit best with her team, but I also tried to look at it from like what would be considered fair, and so I kind of thought of like maybe trying to do one long term and one of the like minorities, because it said 2 to 3 people, so I figured, you know, if she sticks with 2, she can do one long term and one diversity, trying to almost keep the peace and say like, okay, like yes, I got rid of one long term, but I also got rid of one minority, so like you both can't sue me for getting rid of one of each of you. And yeah, so that was kind of where I kind of thought and went. So
yeah, that's really true. That was kind of a way that I tried to skirt it a little bit too, in terms of, well, it said it only had to be 2 or 3 people, so can we get away with 2?
yeah.
Because, you know, in this situation, you really don't want to fire anyone. You don't have a valid reason to let anyone go, which I think is part of what makes it so difficult.
Yeah.
So I think, again, kind of trying to skirt those options and do like the most that you can do for your employees. I was thinking, like, is it possible to maybe transfer 1 or 2 of the employees to a different department that maybe has more resources, or to consider like if there is anyone that's ready to retire or is almost ready to retire that might be okay with taking that moderate severance package. So it's more so a choice in that situation than just kind of, oh, well, sorry about it, good luck.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, if there's no other solution, again, going back to what CJ said about seniority, and basically just fired the last two people that were hired, especially because performance is equal across the board. That was kind of what I considered to be, I guess, the most fair. But I also really liked what you had to say, Becky, about, doing one senior employee and one diversity employee, because I do think that's a more balanced option. So I think that would also be something that I would consider if I were in Karen's situation. And then one thing that I noted about like the whole situation together is that they really should have been making diversity a priority earlier on so that you would have diversity at the senior level. I mean, it's kind of unfortunate that they really only started to think about diversity in the last 2 years. And so now everyone that they have that is a diverse employee is at the bottom, and they're more likely to get cut if something like this happens.
Yeah.
All right, so
sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you, but I really liked that point about like the like looking for retirement and like people who or could be transferred or something like that, because that like didn't even cross my mind. And that's such a good way to like be like, okay, yes, I'm getting rid of this person, but like we're not firing them. But
oh, thank you. I really liked your ideas too. So kind of to go over this one, I guess we had the ideas about seniority and firing the last people that were hired, and then of course the balanced idea that you brought up with kind of one senior and one diversity employee, and then the points that I brought up about kind of trying to get someone who is willing to leave the company rather than firing someone if at all possible, or like transferring them. And then our last question, question 5, which I definitely had a really tough time with, is can you think of other leaders and organizations who have faced similar decisions? How did they respond, and what happened as a result of their choices?
Yeah, put some thought, but honestly, I couldn't really think of anyone who's been in a similar situation off the top. But I know if it were me, I mean, I'd respond with some of the points that were laid out. I don't think there's a way to please everyone in this situation, so I would just try to be as fair as possible without, trying to make anybody feel outcast or I don't know. It's a tough one.
yeah. I too like I had a really like hard time thinking of anyone, and I kind of just had a thought pop in my head, so bear with me if it like doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But I kind of just thought about like all the stuff that's been going on with like Trump, and like especially with the wall between like Mexico and North America, and just how like and it's not exactly like the same situation obviously, but just kind of how we talk about like we need diversity and we want that, and yet we have a leader who's cutting off where our diversity could come from, kind of a thing. And just like we've seen like the backlash from that, and just how much there's been so much like hate towards Trump from it, and just like how like quickly that situation like escalated, kind of a thing. So I don't know if that really applies, but that was the first thought that just came into my head. So
Good point.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're going with that. It's essentially, like you were saying, cutting off potential diversity and kind of the fallout from that. I definitely think that, especially what you were saying about him being a leader and trying to cut off diversity versus like a lot of people that are saying, no, this is really important. We need to have this. I think that kind of ties back into what the textbook was saying about how a leader projects the values of the company. And I feel like there's definitely a dissociation there as far as your example goes, like the leader saying, no, diversity is a bad thing. And then a lot of people throughout the United States saying, no, this is super important. We need this. Please don't like cut off this possible path for diversity. The only example that I could think of, and this was kind of a little bit what informed my answer to the last question, was that when I was a kid, there was a company that my mom worked for that had to lay some people off, and the person that they were going to lay off was a woman, and she was not quite elderly, but she was older than a lot of the other employees at the company. And they, like, rather than lay her off, they were able to actually get her to go down to part-time employment, which was enough to save them money there, but not like completely fire her and kind of throw her out into the wind, basically. So in that case, they were actually able to get away with not having any negative consequences because it worked out for her as well. She was fine with that, but it definitely could have gone bad. And, you know, not everybody is in a situation where they're able to say, okay, yeah, I can take part-time employment. You know, most people need that full-time employment to be able to keep a roof over their head and all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
that was my thoughts there.
Nice.
Okay, so to summarize that last point, we were kind of talking about how none of us really had an example of someone being in a similar situation. Becky, you brought up a good point about diversity and like how that affects the rest of the company, basically. And I think that's about it. Yeah, alternatives to firing people doesn't always work out, but it's a possibility sometimes.
Yeah.
I think that finishes up this case study. So now we just have to sort out our next meeting and who's going to lead that one.
Well, I think it's my turn. So I'm fine with leading for next week. Are you guys still fine with Thursday at 1?
Yep, that works for me.
All right, cool. And then I'll submit the video and stuff, and we'll be all set.
All right.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.